Okay, hey guys, this is the end of my day, but I wanted to kind of debrief a little bit. Sorry, I look crazy. Anyways, I was blessed today to attend the IF gathering. It's a conference that went on today for women and just some really powerful speakers. Michael Todd, Francis Chan, Anita Phillip, like it just really rocked me. And I wanted to take a moment to debrief. So, one of the breakout sessions was about the racial disparities within the church and kind of address like why Caucasians and Black Americans don't really function as one body and one unit, how we still have like segregated churches. And I just wanted to, as a Black woman, give my take on why or some of the things that I face as a Black woman who attends a predominantly white church. So generally when I go to a new church, let's say I walk into a brand new suburban church, predominantly white, I'm generally welcomed, me, my kids, my family. They're generally fairly polite, very excited for us to be there because they want minorities. And I think that that's really important that we highlight that because I've never felt unwelcomed. I don't think that when I walk into a white church, I don't get like the side eye or the whole room, pauses and says, "What are they doing here?" That kind of thing. I think they're always welcoming because truthfully, I think there's a desire for diversity. That's my opinion. And even as you continue to go and they want to get to know you, so you'll get invited to some lunches, you'll get invited to their homes for dinner and just on a get to know you kind of basis. And then I think once you become a member, so they kind of sold you on church, I guess, the dynamics begin to change a little bit. And you start to see kind of what happens in a long-term relationship as a Black woman or a Black family in a white church. So there's three things that I wanted to touch on that make Black families uncomfortable in white churches. The first is Black parents and white parents do not parent their children the same. And so, if I am in a white church and let's say I tell my kid, sit down, or don't move, or don't mess that up, or go clean that up, or don't run through this church from one end of the building to the other. When I address my kids, I can see and sense and feel that the other parents, the white parents, are kind of side eyeing me and kind of giving me this, you know, negative look of like, why do you talk to your kids like that? Well, Black parents and white parents, we are not the same. We don't address our kids the same way. And so for me as a parent, you start to feel uncomfortable, almost like I'm not going to have be in an environment where I feel like I have to justify how I parent my child. And I'm raising Black men. I'm raising little Black boys. My little Black boy who runs through this building and tears the building up and, jumps up and down and doesn't listen or whatever, he is going to be viewed as delinquent or defiant or rowdy, whereas the Caucasian little boy can do the same exact thing and they'll say he's a leader and he's inquisitive and he's testing his boundaries and this is good for him. And so we raise our children different because we are preparing our kids for different things. And so as a Black parent in the white church, when I get the side eye because I told my little Black boy to have several seats, it makes me uncomfortable. Whereas if I was in a Black church as a Black family, I wouldn't have to tell my kid to sit down. I wouldn't have to tell my kid to stop running. I wouldn't have to tell my kid to clean it up because sister whoever already done told him and has already snatched my kid up and told him to stop running and explained to him why he doesn't go, behind the pulpit or whatever. So in a Black church, the entire church parents your child, and rightfully so. And I don't ever, hesitate when an elder in the church or a sister in the church or a mother of the church tells my kid, come sit by me because you don't know how to listen or whatever the case may be. Because the entire church is parenting that child and helping that child to grow. So I think as a Black woman in a predominantly white church, getting the side eye every time that you address your child is like strike one. I'm not, going to be, nobody wants to be in a situation where they feel like they have to explain their parenting approach. And it's not that your approach is better than mine, is that culturally we raise our kids differently. And that's something that has nothing to do with being Christian. It's just everything to do with how I was raised, how I raised my children. And yeah, there's some parenting things that we could get into about whether it's right or whether it's wrong. But my kids are being prepared for a totally different life than the Caucasian children who also attend that church. So I parent them differently. And Black church culture tells you that kids don't run in churches and kids don't, eat in the sanctuary or whatever, random rules we have in Black culture. And so you just naturally teach your child not to do that. And I think it makes white parents sometimes even uncomfortable when you tell your kid to sit down and tell them don't move and tell them, do you hear the preacher talking or whatever the case may be. I don't know what I say to my kids, but I think you guys get the point. So that's the first strike. And that's kind of going to be the first thing that puts that Black family, on guard, is that if I have to explain my parenting to you, I'm already on edge because there's one thing that a Black family is not going to play about, and that's their kids. And I'm not going to explain anything to anybody about me and my kids. The second thing that I think that you start to see is that when you are in a white church, you are definitely welcomed. I can't stress enough how polite I think and friendly and inviting most of my experiences have been in a white church. They just are very friendly. And you're tolerated. Like they tolerate your mess about the same that they tolerate everybody else's. I don't think that they think that my sin is any greater than anybody else's in that room. So I say tolerated in that we talk about spiritual growth, and spiritual growth is the same no matter what color of your skin is, no matter what the color of your skin is, But I don't think that you are ever fully accepted. So in my experience, what I have had is that, and this is just my experience, it ain't nobody else's, but I find that I'm invited to church on Sunday and they're super excited that you're there. I'm invited to home groups and Bible study and they're super excited that you're there. But like on a Friday night when they're just hanging out, when everybody's just sitting at so-and-so's house, just, kicking back and their kids are playing together and, maybe even if they're going out and going shopping or doing something fun, when it's time to just live life on life and just be present with people, I don't get those invites. I don't get invited to the things that aren't on the church's calendar. And that says to me as the only minority that I'm not accepted, that I'm not viewed as your equal because you invite me to church functions but don't think of me when it's time to, have fun or live life together. And so I don't get those invitations. So even though I am a member of the church, I never really feel like a part of the family. And that's strike two, typically, for a Black family in a predominantly white church, is that I'm not really connecting with y'all because I only see y'all on Sunday and on Wednesday. And y'all doing all this stuff because I'm seeing it on Facebook. We see it. It's on Facebook. I'm doing all this stuff on Fridays and Tuesdays, and y'all doing mummies and me's and all this other stuff. And mommy and me, sorry. And I don't get those invites because I'm not fully accepted into what you consider your church family. Also, I think as a woman, and I can only speak for a Black woman, as a woman, I work multiple jobs generally. I'm generally fairly busy, and the demands of my life and the things that God has asked me to do for my family and things that I have to do for my family don't generally line up with what the suburban Caucasian mother is doing. And so I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I don't homeschool my kids. And so even if I am invited to an outing or a gathering of church women, it is very, very hard for me to find something in common. to find just common ground where we could just have a casual conversation that's not forced, that's not prompted, because we really don't have the same life experiences. And I'm not saying that you can't, definitely with time, growth, God, you can find common ground with any woman. But it takes time for a black mother who works 3 jobs to connect with a stay-at-home mom who homeschools her kids. We don't live the same life. We don't have the same talking points. We don't have the same experiences and the same exposures. And so even if I am invited to that function, and maybe that's why I'm not invited, because we don't have that common ground. And so you're not naturally going to think like, hey, let me hang out with her, because what are we going to talk about when I get there? So you have that divide of life experiences and expectations. And you have that divide of, do black women and white women really have a whole lot of things to talk about or a whole lot of things in common? Sometimes friendships with women of color are just easier. And so I think that that's another reason why black families and black women kind of stick to the black church, because you're almost immediately adopted into the family. You almost immediately get that invite to those extra functions or extra gatherings. And you don't have to dig and dig and dig for something to talk about. And then the last reason, or one of the last things I want to talk about, just in my personal experience, I also find that I'm going to talk about the black church first. When my family and I walk into a black church, and I'm married, generally because we are a family unit, churches like families. And so if you are a married unit with 4 kids in a black church, generally when we walk in, almost immediately we are engaged and assigned to ministries. I mean, they will literally just ask us like, what do you want to do? What ministry do you want to serve on? And they'll hand you keys to the building and just really trust you almost immediately, almost too fast, honestly, because you don't really even get to know the people, but they're just so enthusiastic about the family unit. And this is before they even know anything about who you are in terms of like my training or like my experience and work experience and that kind of thing. Just trusting who I am as a person. And so I, in a black church, am often asked to lead whole ministries or to serve in some capacity. My husband is generally asked to preach. Like, we're just given these opportunities to serve in leadership and in places that feel, I guess, meaningful. And for me in a white church, and this is every single white church that I've ever gone to, there's a lack of trust in my ability and in my husband's ability. Maybe more so mine, more so the black woman, I think, because my husband is often asked to do things, but in my ability. And so maybe they'll say, and I'll feel like I almost have to like beg them to serve, like beg them to let me do something. Like they'll say like, does anybody want to, be over the women's ministry? And I'll be like, me, like begging. And they'll look past me and look at Becky with the blonde hair and blue eyes, who's more maybe aesthetically appealing or approachable. Let me say that, who looks more approachable. And they'll put her over the women's ministry and then say to me, but Bree, you can help her. You can help her if you want. And these are real things that have happened to me. Or they'll say, Bree, I really want you to do our kids' ministry. Now, I'm an educator by trade. I can teach anything. But I don't generally teach littles. I teach adults. I was a college professor at one point. So I'm used to teaching adults, and then I coached teens for a long time. So I work with teens and adults. I don't generally work with 2-year-olds. But they'll come to me and say, Bree, you're really great with kids. And that's just the educator in me. It's not anything else. Not even because I enjoy it. It's the educator in me that allows me to take a 2-year-old and just have the best time of my life. Or of their life, because I'm not necessarily having fun. But they'll say, can you lead our kids ministry, right? And so I've had somebody ask me this. I want you to be over my kids ministry. Cool. But I'm going to also assign Sally to the kids ministry. And I'm just going to say her name is Sally. And Sally is going to really be kind of the face of the ministry. And every time that you're in the room with Sally, every time that you're in the room with the kids, Sally's going to be there with you. So you want me to run the ministry, but you don't trust me with your kids. Because I guess you assume that I'm going to do something or say something inappropriate, because you see how I talk to my children who I'm raising black men, and you assume that I guess I'm going to talk to your child that same way. That's not my kid. And so you'll say, if I am given the opportunity, yeah, why don't you do it? You'll be great at it. But I'm going to put so-and-so with you, and she can kind of run the ministry while I do all the work. Or I want you to do it, but I just don't really trust you to do it. Or you guys see, I look like this all the time. This is what I look like. Sometimes I'll put some makeup on, but I don't necessarily look like the person that you walk up to and talk to about the kids ministry, right? And so I have to either accept that or decline. And generally I decline. And then I find even that as a black woman who is somewhat educated and who on a daily basis, uses the gift of administration, I'm never asked in the church to use that gifting. So Monday through Friday, I manage businesses, I manage budgets, I use QuickBooks almost every day. I supervise people. I have employees who I run payroll for. Monday through Friday, I'm in this administrative role and really in a leadership role. And then somehow on Sunday, I lose my skill set. And the most that I can do for you is play with your 2-year-olds. Or currently, I clean the church. Now, I've volunteered to clean the church. It's therapeutic for me. And that's something that I wanted to do. So they didn't make me clean the church. But I also feel like that was where they were comfortable having me. And I don't run the ministry. I'm not over the ministry. There's someone else over the ministry. I just do the work. And so it's kind of this double-edged sword of Bree, you have to be spiritually mature just as a believer to do what needs to be done. And if that's cleaning the church, then clean the church. Who cares? But also, as a minority, you have to say, I'm the most educated person in this room and I clean your toilets. And that's tough. So that, a lot of times, Black families will say, I don't want to go over my parenting approaches with you every Sunday. I don't want to hang out with you on Sunday if I'm not welcome in your house. I don't want to come and serve at your church and bust my butt because I'm type A and I put 110% into everything that I do. But you never give me opportunities to speak or teach or do the things that I'm really, or even do administrative stuff, the things that I'm truly gifted at. You never use my gift, and you never put me in positions of leadership. And it makes you constantly wonder, am I truly a part of the body? And quite honestly, it's just easier to go and surround yourself with other Black Americans. It's easier and almost healthier sometimes to just go to a Black church, because you don't have to deal with a fraction of the things that we're having to deal with as the only in predominantly white churches. So anyways, that's just my debrief moment from the IF gathering today. It was an amazing conference. And I love my church family. I voluntarily go there. I voluntarily serve in the ministry that I serve in. This is not just about one particular experience. In all of my years of being a believer, in the many churches that I have gone to and experienced, these are some of the 3 reoccurring things that kind of keep happening to me. And I just wanted to touch on that.